Hello and welcome again to the Authority of Love. I'm your host, Greg Williams, joined by our co-host, David Walls of the Family Foundation for this Family Foundation Friday on the Authority of Love. David, thanks for joining us, brother.
It's good to be with you.
Yeah. Thanks to you listeners and viewers. Thanks for the encouragement, the feedback we've gotten, and the sharing. We hear that from time to time, and that's encouraging to us, not just that we're doing it, but that we know that the message is getting out there that needs to get out there. So we really appreciate that. Got to say this again, David, because it's ongoing. Continue to pray for those, the Texas flooding victims, their families. Great loss, even mentioned it last week, generational impact there with some of those children and families. So we want to continue to remember them and be safe yourself. Keep yourself safe and be aware of what's going on around you.
Yeah.
Now, I told you last week that we were getting to enjoy our grandchildren, David. We certainly did. So just wait till you get there, David, right?
I've been enjoying my children
good.
this summer.
Yes, I know you have.
We even had a kind of a card night the other night. I had not played Uno in a long time.
Oh,
so
yeah,
they were very excited to have to teach Dad how to play, or reteach Dad how to play Uno.
You were the sucker, right?
So I did not win.
Okay,
gotcha. I don't know what that means. But
the kids had a good time, though,
did.
right? I'll tell you this. My dad said when we had our first child, now this is 30 years ago, he said, man, if I'd have known it was this good, I would have just skipped the parenting. And I said, Daddy, I know you know it doesn't work that way. And so, of course, we just laid him to rest not too long ago. But, it's wonderful. And I'm glad you're enjoying your kids as you should be. And not everything's easy, but it's worth it.
No.
So speaking of kids and children and family, as we do so often on this program, David, the Supreme Court has agreed to take up a powerful case of what's going on in our culture these days. Share with our listeners and viewers what that is.
Yeah, goodness, Greg. Right on the heels of the end of the last term where we had, multiple important Supreme Court victories. The Supreme Court has already announced what's going to be a very big case for the next term. And that is, they have taken up essentially three different challenges. I believe it'll probably all be argued together, together, but three different challenges to states' Save Women's Sports laws. These common sense laws that we have passed in Kentucky, 25 plus other states, might be 27 now. States have passed laws protecting female athletics to keep boys men who claim to be women from competing in girls' sports. The Supreme Court now is going to be hearing a challenge on that case. Very interesting, Greg. The court is going to be looking at essentially the constitutional authority of states to keep men from competing in female athletics. Mm-hmm. They're going to be looking at the Title IX question of whether somehow Title IX would prevent a state from doing this. Yeah. I can go ahead and give you my legal opinion, but I'm not on the Supreme Court on that front.
But seriously, though, David, that would have not even been thought of in I believe, I forget what year, 1995 maybe, when Title IX passed?
Oh.
I can't remember exactly, maybe earlier than that, right. So when it did pass, this wouldn't even been on the radar.
Yeah.
So it certainly wasn't in the original wording of the law.
No, I mean, if we just take a step back, Greg, and say the idea that the Supreme Court is even going to have to consider a constitutional challenge. It's not just on the Title IX front. Those opposing these laws, I believe the ACLU has been involved in these lawsuits, actually, arguing that there is somehow we're violating the Equal Protection Clause of the Constitution by protecting female sports, which is just ludicrous. It's as ludicrous, if not more so, than the argument that thankfully the Supreme Court rejected this last term in the Scrimeti case, upholding the right of states to protect children from being mutilated in the name of gender ideology that we continue to be thankful for.
Right.
But this is going to be a very big case. A lot of this centers around, and I've got to give a mention and a shout out. The very first state, Greg, to pass one of these laws was the state of Idaho back in 2020. And the state representative there that led the charge on this law, she has just been an outspoken advocate across the country. And in fact, that case is known as Little v. Hecox, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. We had actually, the Family Foundation and a number of our state allies, had already submitted a brief to the Supreme Court asking the Supreme Court to hear this case because they had been blocked from enforcing their law, I believe, by the Ninth Circuit, which is, generally the most liberal of the circuit courts.
They get one right every now and then.
Right.
Just say that.
Right. I believe this is also true that they are the most overturned and
Yes,
overruled.
absolutely.
So
by quite a margin, I think.
yes, I believe so. But look, we're continuing to see an increased pushback against the radical transgender agenda. I was looking at an article, Greg, that was talking about that recent polling. 80% of Americans, including both a strong majority of Republicans and even a majority of Democrats, support keeping men who identify, quote unquote, as women from competing and taking away scholarships, honors,
right,
championships, opportunities. Not to mention the safety concerns that are always there. So this is going to be a big case in this upcoming term. Look for us to be joining another related amicus brief in this case. And I also have to mention and give a shout out. There were a number of our strong female legislators here in Kentucky and across the nation that had signed on to this previous brief seeking the Supreme Court to hear this case. So really, the fact that the Supreme Court is taking this up, while I would say it's not completely unexpected, certainly another answer to prayer and an opportunity to once again clarify the law as it relates to a foundational principle.
We've said it many times, David, with common sense, with backed scientific research, and with a correct biblical worldview.
Absolutely.
All of those things play in. I'll say two things about that, and we'll transition a little here. But one of those is that we have our own state delegate, so to speak, that has championed this, and that's our own Riley Gaines, who has done a lot of this. And she was actually involved in the relays at Penn, and that's become part of this issue after Scrimeti was decided. Tell our listeners what happened at the University of Pennsylvania.
Yeah, just to remind folks, I know Riley Gaines, who swam at the University of Kentucky, has been such a champion for women's sports and really a host of pro-family issues now, Greg. She's been championing the life issue with Lila Rose at Live Action and just been doing great work. But just to remind folks, the genesis of her becoming involved in this issue was the NCAA swimming championship, where in that same meet you had Leah Thomas, who's the male swimmer, had swam, I believe, in college as a man.
Yeah, in the UPenn relays.
Yes.
I think that's the one Riley was in.
Had started identifying as a woman, was allowed to compete in the women, won a national championship at the meet, and then also was competed against Riley Gaines in another event, and they ended up tying in that race. And the NCAA, if folks remember the picture, they made Riley stand behind. And I forget what place it was in that race.
It was fifth. I found out. You were correct. Okay. Yeah, it was fifth.
But that picture that kind of encapsulates this entire situation and craziness
ideology
that we were living in just a few years ago. Thankfully, we're reversing course on this.
Right.
But anyways, that's the backstory. Well, now, and a lot of this has to go to the Trump administration that's been pushing back against this at the federal level. The University of Pennsylvania has now announced essentially that they're stripping the titles from Leah Thomas.
Any male
hopefully giving
participants,
proper recognition to the actual female athletes that participated in female sports.
Yeah, and said they would. And to take it a step further, which I really appreciated from Penn, they said they would write a personal letter to each one of those that were wronged. Yeah. Now, that's a powerful turnaround.
It is.
And so I applaud them.
Yeah.
I hope it continues. President Trump, the administration deserves a lot of praise for that. So does the SCOTUS decision, the Supreme Court decision on Scrimeti, and hopefully Save Women's Sports will continue along that line of common sense and solid research and biblical truth.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
That's good. Now, we got another one here in our state that's happened, another case that is impacted, has been impacted by what's gone on in our state. You have a good friend, Corey DeAngelis, who was a strong school choice proponent. And he even stood up against one of the school districts here in Kentucky. What's going on with that?
Yeah, we just thought that this was worth noting. It's probably not going to get picked up a whole lot,
No.
although it should.
Yeah.
Now, Amendment 2, which was the school choice amendment here in Kentucky, obviously that didn't go our way, and I continue to believe.
But I think this is part of the reason it didn't, David.
Well,
what happened there?
Right.
Yeah.
So you had a situation where there were school districts in Kentucky that were blatantly violating the law and using their resources, social media channels, communication channels, to advocate against the amendment. And Corey DeAngelis had called one of the, particularly Pulaski County schools, called them out on this and had gone on their social media channels to point out that they were likely violating the law. And they essentially shut him down. They banned him, tried to shut
Took
down
away his First
comments.
Amendment rights.
He ended up filing a federal lawsuit against the school district on First Amendment grounds.
Right.
And just recently, back on July 8th, there was an announcement that he has won that court challenge, and that the Pulaski County School District has entered into there's been a federal consent decree that will ensure that they no longer that they provide appropriate protections against viewpoint-based discrimination, that they're going to provide First Amendment training for their communication staffs, and they're going to have to pay attorney's fees on this case. Now, I will say this, and they note this in their press release, Greg, that they were thankful that the school district recognized how
Good for them.
how wrong they were and
Yes.
didn't pursue this any further, because what happens a lot of times, and I've seen this in other places across the country, Greg, is that the school district will dig in, and since it's got kind of unlimited resources, they'll just lawyer up and fight
Good for
tooth
them.
and nail, and so I'm thankful that they've recognized it. But this is another example, a reminder of the importance of obviously our First Amendment rights.
Yes.
But it kind of harkens back to one of the reasons why the school choice movement here in Kentucky wasn't ultimately successful, because I would argue we were fighting against, in some cases, school districts. Now we know on the record that we're blatantly violating
heavily
the law.
entrenched.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, and I would say this: we need to continue to have watchdogs be aware. If they've agreed to pay, and then more importantly, to do the training, will they use the trainings for the things we're meant for? And the fact that they said, we realize we made a mistake, hopefully they will follow through on that.
Yeah.
So that would be good. Now, Dave, we got a little bit of time left, and you've been promoting this a little bit, but give us some more on the Kentucky Family Forum coming up on September 27th.
We're really excited about it. You can go to our website at kentuckyfamily.org. Registration tickets, discounted tickets and tables are available now, but we've mentioned Coach Joe Kennedy is going to be our keynote speaker at the lunch. We've got Dr. Alan Josephson, who was, if folks remember, was the U of L professor that essentially got fired for speaking the truth, speaking out against the harm of radical gender ideology on kids. He's won essentially a decision against U of L.
Right.
So he will be there. One of the attorneys from Alliance Defending Freedom, our good friend Matt Sharp, who represented Dr. Josephson, will be there, really excited. But we've got Lori Kirkendall, who's one of the leading nation experts on the concerns about sex education, the proper biblical way that we should be teaching about human sexuality. Looking forward to her. Josh Wood, the executive director of Us Before Them, just a great ministry. It's going to be there. We've got many others that are going to be joining us. I know you're going to be with us again, Greg.
I look forward to it.
Excited to have you there. Get your tickets now. Hope you can join us on September 27th.
Yeah, that's great. As a matter of fact, we're just hearing some things out of the Trump administration into Health and Human Services about stopping some of the indoctrination from sex ed. So thank you for joining us. Thanks for your prayers. Thanks always to the Lord. Make it a great day, and God bless in Christ. I'm Greg Williams with David Walls, and you're listening to Family